Hey guys, welcome to a fresh training report. Matter of fact, this will be the last training report on the Blue Abroad YouTube channel that we have in Melbourne. And Paul Sebastiani is back from the UK. He's back in the northern suburbs at Bundoora. Mate, it was a weird place to have training, but we were there.
I think it's the first time we've had open training at La Trobe University Sports Stadium ever. Really, I think I remember covering it. I think we may have played VFL or VFLW there a few years ago, potentially. So, yeah, it's actually not the worst ground. It's in not the worst spot. There are a lot of people there, which was great. The turnout was bloody enormous, which I suppose you would expect when it comes to our club. It's good. It's good. Good morning. Good
Lots,
day.
lots of Carlton supporters in the northern
Yeah,
suburbs. Let me tell you that, mate.
plenty of them, mate. Plenty of them. You and I
Yeah,
both. Well, you
mate,
not
I got to
anymore,
go back.
but
Well, I was back home for the first time. I mean, I
yes.
stayed in South Morang for the night, which was back on the old stomping ground. I went up last night, stayed at my parents' place, and made the
That would
trek
have
this
been
morning so much
they,
easier. But
they would
I
have been
did get
chuffed
there
to have
way
you
too
back
early.
home, mate. They would have been
Yeah,
chuffed to have you back home.
mate, Mum was bouncing off the walls. She was stoked.
God bless.
But
God.
we had a training session. I got there early. I got there way too early. Not gonna lie. Like I'm talking, I probably got there at about 8:05, and
Right,
training didn't start till
right,
9:30.
right.
But I got to see with my own eyes that Charlie Kerno was there. He didn't train, but I did see him floating around. Um,
Yes.
so that's one name we can tick off the box that was there. But he didn't train, and that's not a surprise because he's in a group of people who I think they're just nursing them through
Yep.
to Christmas, and then after Christmas they'll integrate back into full contact. And I think there's a few of them that were in that rehab group that didn't change from last week. You know, the Durdens, the McGoverns, and Jack Silvani and these types. So there's a little group in the rehab side of things, but otherwise
Mm.
it was plenty of numbers.
It's the thing that shocked me the most. We had 40 people out on the track, which was or in that vicinity. It's a welcome change when it comes to this time for a Carlton pre-season. So there are a few blokes that pulled up a little sore from training, whether it was to do with contact or drills and whatnot. I think McGovern was getting the inside of his left groin or left leg deeply massaged about halfway through the session, and I don't think we saw him. But Blake Acres was a bit of a surprise, given the fact that he's had back surgery. So I think, yeah, like I said, and you and I both, when we were having a chat about it, that we were pleasantly surprised with regards to how many numbers were actually out on the training park, which is very very nice. It's a welcome change, put it that way.
Definitely.
Mm,
Um, without going into too much detail, if
yes.
I were to ask you three
Mm,
players, just out of your quick memory, who caught your attention for whatever reason, who would they be?
Jagger Smith, no doubt about it. There was a little passage of play which I'm sure we'll get into, and I'm sure you got a little bit of footage of towards the back end of training that was very, very nice, very, very special, and very eye catching. So Jagger Smith for me. Second, Adam Chera. He was moving freely, looked to be past any ailments that really held him back last season, and he looked as fit as a fiddle. And the third, hmm, third, it's a good question. Harry Lemmy, yeah, was competing a fair bit. He was involved in a lot. Involved in a lot. So I don't know what that means, but they were the three for me.
Let's start with Jagger because
Yep.
trying to keep a lid on it. He's a first year player. I know he's a pick three, and so there's hype and
Yeah.
expectations and all. But he just appears. Like he just appears
Mm.
out of thin air, and then he's got like really quick hands in traffic. And I think there's a I don't know if it's the majority of opinion, but there is an opinion out there like, oh, he's got to put a bit of size on, and he needs a few years in the
Yeah.
system. I
Yeah.
don't think he have any issue finding the ball and disposing of the ball when you've got the big bull to do in that midfield. He's just got some quickness about him, quick thinking and quick reaction time. And every time I watch him train, I'm impressed.
Yeah, well, we haven't really had anyone that's been able to, in a real contested situation, burst their way through the stoppage. I'm talking like slalom their way through at a rapid amount of pace. I mean, Cripper does it, but Cripper does it by force, not by turn of foot. You know, he does have some sort of acceleration, but that passage of play where we saw Jagger Smith in the forward pocket just scorch his way through the contest. And I know he missed the shot, but we haven't seen anyone move like that in our midfield since Chris Judd, really. And it's not. I'm not saying that he's Chris Judd or anything like that. I don't want people to conflate the two or anything like that. But that particular movement through the stoppage, we haven't seen anything like that at the stoppage for a long, long time. And yeah, he looks like he's got. We wanted a point of difference, and I think he's got that. He's definitely got it. He looks a really, really good footballer, real wiry type as well. I don't think he's ever going to be a player that fills out completely or gets to that bulky stage. But yeah, he's got something about him, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's all in the footwork. Do you know?
Yes.
I know comparison is the thief of joy, but the footwork reminds me of Mark Murphy in Traffic. It's the
Yeah,
quick pitter patter footsteps. You
yeah,
know?
yeah. I know he's kind of his own player, Jagger Smith. He copped a
Yeah,
nice
he is.
stiff arm from Cripper, but yeah, I don't know, he seems a character that I reckon will be unawed by what's happening around him with regards to the football club, the fan base, the media hype, the pressure, all that kind of stuff. I think he's just there to play football, mate. The rest, I think, he kind of realizes is going to come, and it's all part of the package when you play with the club. But I actually don't think that's going to err him at all. He seems to
Mhm.
be unawed by it all, to be honest.
Yeah. Chera, you did mention second. I'm glad you did
Yeah.
because also saw what we all remembered him to be, and that was a really solid player through the midfield. Also
Mm,
has really quick hands. I was able to capture a few moments in the training highlights where he just fed the ball out really quickly.
mm.
Um, had a little bandage under his knee. I don't think there was anything in that. I don't really know what it was, but he looked to be moving as good as he ever has been, and he's got the fresh shaved head, which is
He
always a
does.
great sign.
Yes, especially for this time of year as well. And everything was sort of flowing through him during the simulation that we saw. So there was half ground stuff, and they did full ground stuff, and he wasn't held back, was he? He was looks as though to me he was in full training. He didn't really miss much, or he wasn't really held back from any of the drills. It seemed as though he was there, full contact, the body, touch wood, seems to be in a good place. And I think there was an article that went out on the website, the Calm website today, about his trip to Doha and Qatar for that week training camp that he went through to try and figure out what was happening with his hamstrings. So hopefully he can just stay fit because, geez, he's a very, very good player when he's up and going, and just hope his body stays sound. That's all that's holding him back really at the moment. But
Yeah.
from what we saw today, it looks as though it could be, and hopefully it's all a thing of the past.
And then Harry Lemmy.
Yeah.
The presence definitely was a factor. Mind you, it probably doesn't come up on the footage as much, but it was windy. There was a gust.
Yeah.
Um, and I actually captured him taking a set shot into the wind, hit it beautifully. He's got a nice routine, goes back, gives himself plenty of room. Again, just training, but to see him have presence in the group, they're little baby steps for him.
They are. Look, it's not me declaring him as a senior starter or him saying, or me saying that he's going to go and kick 30 goals in a season and solidify a spot in the senior team. It was when we're talking about this specific training day, he was involved in a lot, and he competed well. Aerially, he was not. He kind of double grabbed at a few marks and whatnot, but got a thumping kick on him. I'll give him that. And look, I don't know if he's just going to be purely a forward. I know they've tried him down back and they've given him stints in the ruck. I don't know if he's quite at that level as a key forward, especially in this team, given what we've got and the stocks we have up there. But I just like the fact that he was involved in a lot. He wasn't a ghost or anything like that. So
Yeah.
he's a lump of a lad. I don't know what it means. You know, he's in his third year of football, and they've obviously shown some sort of faith in him to keep him on board. So he could be one to watch. But yeah, like I said, from this particular training session, he was one that was involved in a lot.
Tell you a guy that caught my eye, and you know, every year there's that player that looks like they've put on a couple of kilos of size through the shoulders, and there's always that player. And he hit me right between the eyes this morning, and that was Hudson O'Keefe.
Oh yeah.
Saw him for the first time this morning. He had his back turned to me, and like he was wearing the number 40. And I looked at him, and I'm like, I've never really seen him that thick up the top.
Yeah.
Then he turned around, and like he seems to have really filled out into that body. I don't know what it means for his prospects next year, but he's one that's been in the system for a few years now. He's not I mean, rucks do take a little longer, I understand, but he definitely caught my attention just from the change in body composition from the last time that I really looked at him.
Mate, I didn't even know it was him, to be honest.
Yeah.
when I saw the back of him, I kind of had to do the double take. I'm like, number 40. I'm like, that's Hudson O'Keefe. I go, that's not him, is it? So I go, no, that's Hudson O'Keefe. He looks a completely different person, to be honest. Well, I won't name who it was, but was talking to someone involved with the club at training today, and he said to me, he said, he goes, yeah, Hudson O'Keefe is I'm not going to say the word, but he's got a bit of that see you next Tuesday in him, and that's what's really sort of setting him apart, and that's why a lot of the coaches really, really like him. He's got that real competitive edge to him, and he's got a bit of forward craft too. I mean, if you want to compare maybe him and Pitternet, you would say that Hudson O'Keefe is probably the more pure footballer of the two, and Hudson O'Keefe's forward craft, from what I've seen in VFL, is far better than what, with all due respect, Mark Pitternet's is. So I suspect that from a depth perspective and from a squad perspective, when you're looking at that ruck position, I think when you look at him, Harry Lemmy, Mark Pitternet, Tom De Koning, you're trying to find an edge and you're trying to find a way into the team and a point of difference. And I think compared to Pitternet, I think Hudson O'Keefe's ruck levels are better than Harry Lemmy if they wanted to go down that path. And Hudson O'Keefe's forward play and now surround the forward line is better than Mark Pitternet. So he's probably got an edge on those two. So I would say he could be close to that second ruck, mate. He could very well be, just based on his skill set, I think.
Well, if he's able to put together a year where he even puts himself in contention to play, that's only going to make that squad better, because he hasn't really been a factor for selection for the most part since we've had him. It doesn't seem that way anyway. But if he's able to become a factor and give the team selection something to genuinely consider and force himself into the conversation, that just means we're stacked in that department. And it's just, selection headaches are great. They're great to have.
Yeah, they are. They are. And it's also, as much as we haven't won anything, right, it's also about these senior guys that are 24 to 25 or older. As much as they're going to hold up a lot of the team and a lot of the output, we've also got to start doing that. Getting those guys in underneath as well to start finding what their standard is as well. And if they're called upon, if we need them in the season, we don't want that quality and output to diminish as much as it may have in previous seasons. So I've got a lot of time for him. A lot of time for him. I think he could be one to potentially overtake a player like Mark Pitternet as the second ruck. So he's definitely one to watch as well, no doubt about it.
Yeah. What else did I notice today? It was good to see the Canberra boys get amongst it. They didn't. No shortage of the football. Yeah, no shortage of the football. They were trusted.
Yeah. Doc was out there. I know he's his 14th preseason.
Something like that. Yeah.
And he's getting old too.
Yeah.
So he was moving well. He was part of everything.
Yep. Yeah. And then there were a couple of plenty of extras. We saw, I think, Jade Gresham's younger brother. I think his name's Tyson. We saw Denver Granger Barras. He was in and amongst it together with Liam McMahon. And then it was funny how it played out because we got to training and you mentioned this particular name, which I'll let you explain the situation, but you mentioned his name before we even saw him play properly. Then out of nowhere, he does this move, this pickup. And I'm like, who's that? And you're like, that's my guy. So who is this person that you knew about? You were told about him and then he just showed up.
Right. So the gentleman who I spoke to, who was referring to Hudson O'Keefe, and how he's got this particular competitive edge, also referred to this gentleman, this young man, this skinny, lanky fella. And he's a next gen academy player, I believe, with Carlton. And for those wondering, they would have seen a very, very scrawny, skinny number 42 in the white singlet buzzing about the field. And he goes by the name of Jack Ison. So like bison, but without the B, basically.
Okay.
Right. And I got confused. So when this gentleman told me, he said, "Oh, that's Jack Ison." I said, "Oh, Jack Bison." He goes, No. Ison. And there was now that I think there's a running joke that every time someone asks who that number 42 was, my mate, big shout out to Daniel, big MBs, he turned to me and he's like, "Oh, that's Paul's guy. That's Jack Ison. That's Jack."
Well, there were two passages of play. There was a spin move in traffic with the handball out, which I managed to capture. And then there was this like pickup. And I'm like, okay, well, he's not a factor right now for the team. But the fact that we're even talking about him and that he's caught our attention and he's not even on the list, I think just says a little something about him.
Yeah. No, it's good to get. It's also good to get the. It's also not inside info or anything like that, but it's good to get a bit of an insight into people who are actually at the club, saying that they think that there's a particular young player in that next gen academy and that particular avenue of our club that could actually be worth pursuing in the next couple of seasons. I don't know what it means. It's probably 2-3 seasons or 2 to 3 years down the track, but it could be a name to remember in a couple of drafts to come. So Jack Ison is his name.
Jack Ison, Paul's mate.
Normally, and then Ison, Ison, part of our next gen academy, I believe. So
if we're ever unsure, it's Paul's mate.
Yeah. I never met the bloke. I didn't even know who he was.
Yeah.
Now we do.
Other updates, Nick Newman back in his classic defensive role. Brody Kemp still playing in that forward role. I tell you a guy who has not missed a beat, and that's Zach Williams. Has not missed a session. Doing everything at this stage. It's always a good sign. Second year off the ACL. It's just good to see him back it up. And the big hope for him is the continuity part. If you can get that going, he's got a role on the forward line now. Bit of a point of difference there with Matto. He's out of the club, and you don't know what's going to happen. Jesse Motlop's obviously another name as well. But I'm liking, as we get into this next wave of preseason updates, there's little storylines that start stacking up. And I reckon Zach Williams will be one to feature. I think Cheras, we've already touched on him. But you did touch on something earlier there about we have our senior guys and we know who they are and the core players and they're going to do their thing and they're great. But this next wave, this, first to fourth year player, this, Lockie Cowan, Binns, Lemmy, Moya, Hollins, these are the ones that I think if they can elevate greater than what they already have, it's going to go a long way to the team better. Because I don't know how much better Charlie, Harry, Jacob, Cripps, but you kind of know what you're going to get with these guys.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly right. And as much as you say that, we can look back at last season, and we said off the top of this is that there are a lot of numbers out on the track, and from what we see, there's no to key players or anything like that. There's not a hell of a lot of long-term, we're waiting on 5 or 6 blokes to come back in February, March, maybe the start of April or anything like that for now anyway. So it could be a simple case of just keeping as many players fit, really, when you think about it. So, it's an interesting one too with Zach Williams. They do say, and I do believe this as well, that ACLs to me, it's a 2-season. I really do think it's a 2-year injury. That first year to actually get back into the huge load of playing AFL and getting your body through the rigors of it again, because you do your ACL and then because you haven't gone through that, your body hasn't gone through it for a while. You do cars and you pull up tight in your hamstring, and until he gets into that this season, I just hope that he can play. If he can play anywhere in excess of 16, 17, 18 games, it'll go a long way, mate. It'll go a long way. He also, did he do a little bit? I think he did do a little bit of stuff down back as well, which is an option too. I mean, we saw him play down there in opening round last season, and he was phenomenal upon his return. I thought he was absolutely brilliant last season in that first game against Brisbane. So he's one to look out for if he can stay fit. And I know we say this all the time. If he can stay fit, but he's genuinely a player that if he fits the mold and does stay fit, he's one that can really propel us to the heights that we want to reach, I think.
So if I'm saying to you, we know who our 4 or 5 in the middle are when it comes to midfielders, right? So if I was to say Cripps, Walsh, Chera, Hewitt, let's just leave it at those 4. Cripps, Walsh, Chera, Hewitt. Who are the names for you that are going to make up the next 3 spots if you were doing like a depth chart, we'll call it, in that midfield? Say De Koning's your ruck. I know Cooper Lord's obviously going to be in the mix, but who are those next guys that are going to fill the void that's been left?
So we've got Cripps, Walsh, Chera, Hewitt, Smith. It has to be I'd say that'd have to be yeah.
Like, I don't know how much midfield Doc's going to play, even though he seemed to just be around the ball a lot today.
And the question with him is that the midfield is, I mean, from an aerobic point of view, I mean, is it the most physically taxing role on the ground? Just from a running, you're always involved in contests. That's and is his body now more opening itself up to being a runner rather than a guy who's going to be? I don't know. That's it. I'm sure he'll be thrown in there if we need him in there, but I don't see him as a lock, stock, barrel midfielder next season unless they have something completely different planned for him. But he's never played on ball predominantly for a year. Like, it's not, why would they do it now after 3 ACLs? You know what I mean? I think we'll see him move in there in moments. I think he'll be part of a rotation for bits and pieces in a game if he does play, but I'm more looking towards guys like Elijah Hollands getting in there ahead of him. Maybe even someone like Ashton Moyer, who played a few little minutes in midfield as well during the VFL season too. So, yeah, I'd say Smith is going to be up there really, really early. I mean, we moved heaven and earth to get him.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
And I mean, make of it what you will. They rated him number 1. I don't know what that means. They were saying there were 5 or 7 blokes that could have gone number 1 this year. I don't know. I almost roll my eyes when I say it as well. Is that you hear that all the time? If we had pick 1, we would have taken that bloke. We took at pick 12 anyway. But the fact that we moved a lot and got a lot done to get him to the club suggests that you'd assume he's going to have an impact immediately. I mean, he did on the training track today, and based on the fact that he's purely a point of difference to almost all of our midfielders, why wouldn't you play him? I think he's ready. I really do think he's ready.
Well, he's got so many other bigger midfielders around him that can carry that burden. Not to say that he can't win his own ball, but when you're standing next to Cripps and Hewitt and Chera and Walsh, I mean, they're going to put him in positions to succeed more than what he needs to put them in positions to succeed in that early part of his career anyway.
Yeah, well, he's not getting thrown to the wolves like Dow and Walsh and those blokes were when they first came in. And I know we said it a couple of weeks ago when we had a chat on the Monday show. With all due respect to Murph, the bloke was battered when these younger blokes were coming in. And Cripps was only just starting to to rise to the occasion as well. And he was still a young footballer too. He was still learning a lot as well. Whereas now these younger blokes are coming in and they're actually coming into a team that's of a high standard, that has played finals, that kind of knows what it's all about as well. So I don't want to say he'll be protected. To a point, I suppose you will. You know, you've got to protect your teammates. He's a young player. He's only just come into the system. But they're going to throw him in there and they're going to say, mate, do what you need to do. We've picked you with pick 3 because we think you can be a player who's going to propel us with regards to our midfield output. We haven't picked you with the pick we've had because we don't think you're going to be or have an immediate impact on the team. So, yeah, I think he can, in the depth chart, I think he could even move to 3rd or 2nd by the end of the year. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, he's a higher pick than Cripps. He's a higher pick than Chera. He's a higher pick than Hewitt. You know, the only bloke he's not a higher pick with regards to in our midfield is Sam Walsh. And he probably would have been had we have had pick number 1, is what they were saying.
Imagine they filmed that exact piece of content for like 3 different players.
Yeah. Well, maybe. Well, they could. It was on draft night. It was on draft night.
It was.
But maybe they did. I don't know. I don't know what was going on in those rooms. Maybe they were on the delay. Who knows?
Any other last bits that we haven't touched on? I'm trying to think. What have we missed? Who wasn't there? Well, Charlie didn't train. Chincotta, I didn't see Chincotta train, but I did see a video of him signing autographs. So, like, he was around. From my experience, it was only Charlie and Chincotta that I did not see do any training.
Jordan Boyd didn't do a lot.
Didn't do a lot. That's true. He was there, but he didn't do a lot. Jack Silvani didn't do a lot, but he was obviously there. He was sort of towards the side doing his forward craft and all of that with Corey Durden. Yeah,
so Corey Durden, so he just being purposely? I know he had the shoulder surgery. Is he just purposely being held back? Is that the news with him?
The last update on the players that are coming into contact after Christmas, it was Cottrell, Durden, obviously Akers when it comes to contact. I think Charlie's in that boat as well. I mean, Jack Silvani would be there as well.
Yeah.
I think those are the guys that won't be doing contact until after Christmas.
Okay, right. Okay, so that's the news. But they didn't seem to be. There were no ailment. They looked to be fit. I say, you know, they weren't carrying any. Well, Silvani had no strapping on his knees at all.
Yeah,
which is, I suppose, that's a good sign. Jackson Binns was involved in a fair bit. He's another one. Yeah. Ashton Moyer was out there. He looks like he's filled out a little bit too. Tom DeConing as well. It's nice to see him back. Jeez, we missed him. My goodness. He's a specimen.
Well, I tell you what, it was Cripps that really held the keys to lifting the team. Walsh sort of took that mantle a bit. Charlie's got that ability. Jacob's got that ability. And I mean, now Tom's got this ability when he had that stretch in, 2024. Now, can he extend that stretch of 5-6 games into 10, 15? That'd be unreal because he's obviously got a point of difference when it comes to how he plays in that position. So,
it's interesting. I think there were 2 things I sort of picked up from today. One has been festering away in the background for the last sort of couple of weeks, and one that I wanted to hone in on today as well. The drills that they were doing in the simulation that they were partaking in today, I'd love to know what the purpose was behind it, because there was half ground, then they did stoppage work, then they did full ground. And I'd like to know what the purpose was for today's training session and what the purpose is for the majority of the preseason. And I know a few of them were speaking about being better defensively and being better at defensive stoppages as well, which was an area that we leaked in last season. But I'd love to know what the purpose of each drill was today and what they wanted to get out of it. I mean, we won't know because we're not privy to that information, but it'd be nice to know what they wanted to get out of today and what they plan to get out of a lot of these sessions. And I know it's fitness, it's getting to understand new game plans and different tactics and whatnot. The other thing as well, which is, I mean, is it more of an intangible thing? It probably is to a point, but our club, I mean, Carlton's always going to be in the media spotlight, right? That there's, if we blink or sneeze, it's a media headline, right? But this preseason just feels there's something different about this preseason. I don't feel that there's this, like we're always going to be spoken about, but it feels as though we're all just waiting for it to play out. It's like, all right, well, we know where we're at. We know we're probably good enough if we stay fit, and it's just rather than talk and wrap everybody up, let's just get on with it. I don't know. I feel there's none of that pump up with us anymore. It just feels that way to me. It's not a manufactured hype. I don't feel that way. I don't feel that there's a lot of hype about the club. I don't know. I don't know if you feel that way, but I felt that maybe because I was off, but
no, listen, it's a good point because 5 years ago they've got to sell the dream.
Yeah.
They're selling hope. You got young key forwards coming through. You're not really trying to convince the public anymore of who's coming through. Like, this is us.
Yeah.
Whether we're going to win it or not remains to be seen, or do well or not remains to be seen. But this is kind of it. This is the group. They're in their prime. The core of it is now in a really nice spot in their careers collectively. I don't think we need to sell the dream anymore. We've obviously got record members, so we're debt free as a club. So it is a bit of a wait and see because there is change happening at the end of next year. You're going to have a new president. You're going to have a CEO, officially, and he gets a nice 12-month runway into it. So
right? I did see him there today.
He was there. He's looking. I'll tell you what, and he's not a player, but he's looking trim. He's looking. He's looking in good shape. Yeah, I mean, I've seen photos of him, and then I almost didn't recognize him when I saw him this morning. I'm like, well, he's got a really leaned out in his face, and he's
Maybe we've stressed him out already.
What more of that came from, mate?
He's only been a month in the job. He's become a pack a day.
Oh dear, mate. Oh dear.
I know. Yeah. I just, like I said, I just feel that there's no hype or rubbish this season. I don't know. It's just something different. Maybe because it is different. That's probably because it is.
Yeah. Well, that has been a really extensive training report. Thanks for joining me, Paul. And if I don't see you before Christmas, Merry Christmas.
Thank you to you and your family and everybody listening and tuning in.
Absolutely. There is another session in Queensland coming up. I might see if I can get in touch with someone there that can maybe give us some notes as to what happened. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next installment of whatever we've got coming up.